Hello and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. Stress during normal times is a part of daily life, and most people have coping skills in place to manage it. But these are not normal times, and the ongoing uncertainty around the coronavirus has ramped up anxiety and even fear as the crisis continues. This edition of Open Line explores ways you can help yourself and your family cope with the unprecedented stress of our times. Our guests are Rebecca Corona, PhD, lead psychologist at Parkland Health and Hospital System, and Margaret Howard, regional engagement lead for Cigna. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the two of you bring a wealth of expertise to the table on mental health issues. So before we dig in, would you mind telling our viewers a bit about your backgrounds? Let's start with Rebecca.
Sure. I have been working with Parkland now a little over 10 years. I'm actually a transplant from El Paso, but I've made Dallas my home. And I'm very excited to be able to provide services to patients within the primary care setting. So as people come to see their primary care doctors to deal with their everyday issues or chronic health concerns, we have behavioral health services available to them that include counseling and psychiatry services. So we're very excited because we also have a clinic in the Irving community, and we're very open and willing to do whatever we can to help.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret Howard. I am a Houston native, and I've worked with Cigna for many years now, worked specifically in corporate wellness for nearly 20 years. My background is actually in nutrition, but I focus in on corporate wellness and working with employers within Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma to figure out how we can mitigate health risk and also reduce health costs for them. City of Irving is a valued partner of Cigna, and so I'm very happy to be here to share some insights with you around COVID and also how to reduce anxiety as well.
Well, we are happy to have both of you here. Thank you so much. Now, we've been observing health protocols since March to help flatten the curve of the disease. That's right around 4 months, and many people are finding themselves, well, a bit overwhelmed. Rebecca, I'll address this first question to you. Have you seen an increase in the number of patients needing to speak with a counselor due to COVID-related stress?
Yes, I have. The uncertainty has made the situation very difficult for all of us, especially with the most recent increase in positive results of people who have COVID. It feels like a roller coaster, and many people are uncertain about how to deal with it, so they're reaching out for help.
Oh, I bet. And Margaret, are you seeing the same trends?
Absolutely. We're seeing an increase of individuals reaching out to our EAP professionals, scheduling virtual connection with those providers as well as their physicians, looking for virtual care with their physicians. And then also our health coaches are seeing an increase of individuals reaching out for coping strategies around stress management and anxiety.
It's just heartbreaking to see so many people hurting, but I'm so glad y'all are there to help them out. Rebecca, what would you say are the most common emotional issues patients are dealing with?
Unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in anxiety, in depression, in restlessness, grief, irritability, just a sense of hopelessness for many, not certain about what's going to happen, concern for themselves, their kids, their well-being, rent, how they're going to manage in the future. So it's just a riot of emotions that they're having right now.
I understand. And Margaret, let's talk about what that actually looks like. I mean, how are people manifesting their COVID-related anxiety?
Absolutely. We're seeing an increase, believe it or not, especially during the end of the school year. We saw an increase around calls around domestic violence in particular. We're seeing an increase of individuals outreach us around panic attack, anxiety. So it's manifesting in different ways for different people. I think the most critical point is knowing what resources and avenues to receive help. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's affecting different people and different ages. I mean, adults are experiencing stress and trying to cope, but they're not alone in that. Many parents have noticed that their children are also dealing with stress. Rebecca, do children manifest stress differently than adults?
Yes, they can. We see it more behaviorally in children. they're not necessarily going to come to you and say, "Hey, mom, I'm feeling stressed." You might notice that there's some regression in their behaviors. They start acting a little bit younger than their age. They may start wanting to sleep in bed with you again when they've been sleeping on their own. You might notice more tantrums, more irritability on their part, even more tearfulness, more emotionality than is usual for your child. So if you notice any difference from what is the norm for your child, then it's quite possible that they are feeling the stress of this.
Well, I'm glad you've kind of given us the signs that parents should look for that their child may be dealing with anxiety. I have a 7-year-old, and I can tell you that I've noticed that she'll do the baby talk. And I'm like, why are you talking like a baby? Stop talking like that. But now, because you've given me that knowledge, that information, it lets me realize that that may be how she's dealing with her stress. So thank you for that. And I'm sure other parents are so grateful for that too. Let's turn now to some strategies that people can use to cope with the stress that's brought on by COVID. And Margaret, I'll turn to you for that first. Let's start with you. What can people do?
I think one of the critical things to do is to create a stress care plan. The truth is, stress is inevitable. We all deal with it in different ways, but we all deal with it. And I think one of the most critical things that we can do is to create a stress care plan. We have resources available at Cigna.com/my stress plan, which really helps individuals create, and we use that acronym PLAN on purpose. So P is for finding a period of time to unwind. A is for a location to de-stress. And then, I'm sorry, L is for a location to de-stress, A is for an activity to enjoy, and then N is for someone to talk to. And so having a plan, figuring out a period of time, a location, an activity, and the name of someone to talk to is critical. One of the things I've really been encouraging individuals to do, and the organizations that I work with and partner with, like City of Irving, is to really make sure that there's a clear understanding that social distancing is really about being physically distant, but we can still be social. And so that isolating feeling of being alone is one of the areas that has been most impactful for people, children included. So it's really important that we are making the focus on physical distancing, but still employing opportunities to be social in ways that are still healthy and allow us to maintain physical distance.
That's great advice. Yeah, so we can have those meetings where people, our friends, can hang out but be far away from them, or we can do like we're doing, talk on Zoom or let your kids connect with FaceTime. I love that idea. Thank you so much. And Rebecca, what would you like to add?
Well, I would say that something that has been really helpful for some of my families are drive-by visits. With the population that I work with, they tend to be more of people of color. And this particular situation has been really difficult because they're used to socializing. They're used to large family gatherings. They're used to dropping by grandmother's house after work to have dinner. And so for many of the people who I speak to, this has actually been a very depressing situation for them because they don't have those contacts. So even driving by and waving at grandma or talking to grandma through the window has helped a lot of people out, even though they physically can't touch them, which they certainly miss. But I would certainly recommend that exercise be part of everyone's day. And when I say exercise, I don't mean to use it like a bad word. Activity is usually something that I talk about with people. You know, if you love to dance, dance. If you love to listen to music while you do your chores, turn it up. A lot of people have turned to their spiritual beliefs for a lot of support in this time. Putting the things that are out of their control in someone else's hands instead of trying to carry that burden. And then, you know, taking an opportunity to learn something new. Many of us work very hard and don't have time to take for ourselves. And so maybe if you enjoy puzzles, they're stopping and doing a puzzle now, or maybe they're learning something new for themselves. But this doesn't necessarily have to be so scary all the time. If we can find a place, just like she mentioned, like Margaret mentioned, I think we can do that as well.
I like what you've added too, faith, fitness, and some fun things to do. Thank you for that. Now, if a person finds themselves, Rebecca, feeling anxious, what are some quick ways to help calm down other than that fitness or the faith aspect? What else can they do to just calm down instantly?
Well, I would recommend taking some deep breaths. You know, many of us forget that our anxiety or stress is actually tied to a physical response in our body. And that's a normal, natural response that's there to protect us from the stressor or the danger that we're experiencing. So if we stop what we're doing and we take a few deep breaths, deep breath in through your nose, let it fill up your lungs, and then breathe slowly out of your mouth, that will help you regain some control and perspective of the situation. Now, it's also going to be important to challenge some of those fearful thoughts that some of us are experiencing in that moment with facts. You know,
Right.
if we're triggered by something and we're feeling scared, where are we really? Well, I'm sitting here in my office, in my chair. I'm okay. And those thoughts that combat those feelings, those fears, help again bring the body back to more of a calm state.
Yeah, the mind is so powerful. Thank you. Margaret, are there things parents can do to help their children in moments of high anxiety? I mean, they can do the breathing too. What else can they do?
Absolutely. So I think to the doctor's recommendation as well, fitness is really important, and children are used to getting their energy out in that way. So the stress and anxiety has a way out as well. So encouraging them to spend time outdoors to exercise, or in their language, play is exercise. So encouraging them to have that interaction outside is important. I think also we can encourage children by helping them by limiting the amount of time that they're hearing a lot of this information. We are flooded daily with information as it relates to COVID-19. And so I think one of the most important things that parents can do is to regulate the amount of time that they are intaking that information, right? Funnel the source. Maybe you get your information from one source instead of multiple sources. And doing that by funneling it for themselves as parents, they'll also funnel the information for their children and limit the amount of information that the child is receiving, and then talking with their children. I think it's important that we don't take for granted that children understand everything that they're hearing. I think it's important for parents to take some time out to explain to the child kind of what is happening and what they're hearing as well.
Good information for sure. Now, the response that some people have is totally different. They may be saying, oh, I just deal with it. That's how they handle stress. They just deal with it. In other words, they're in denial or feeling there is some stigma attached to admitting that they're actually overwhelmed. But is it normal to feel frightened right now? Margaret, let's start with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's no shame in feeling overwhelmed or feeling frightened or not having the answer. I think for parents, that's one of the challenges right now with their children is not having the answer. And it's okay during this time to have those unknowns and to have the fear around them. I think the most important thing, again, is knowing the resources of where to go for help, who to talk to, having someone to talk to. And we'll share some resources a little bit later around professionals that can help answer some of those questions and be that shoulder to really lean on during this time. But it's not uncommon to feel anxious, no.
Yeah, some people need to know they're not alone in feeling that way. Rebecca, same question for you. How do you answer that?
Again, I completely agree with Margaret. There is absolutely no shame in feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, depressed, grief, anything that you're feeling. You know, emotions are neutral. They're not good, they're not bad. They just are how we feel in that moment. And as we process our experience, our emotions can change. Many of us think that our emotions will stay the same forever, but they won't. And that's kind of what gets us entrenched in that feeling. So I also recommend seeking out help, and help is available in many areas. It could be as simple as your best friend or your mom or your dad. And it could also mean seeking out help, which many of my patients have told me they didn't want to do because they don't want to be considered crazy. They don't want to get worse. They don't want me to put them in a hospital. But it's a matter of education on our part to let them know we're actually here to help, not to hurt.
Wonderful. You know, I want to talk more about that. Like you said, there's help available. And the CDC website addresses concerns around mental health with a list of self-care options, one of which is connecting with others. But that itself can be difficult because of the need to social distance right now. So what can people do to maintain contact with friends and family? Margaret, what do you suggest?
I think what helps is to set again a plan. Have a time of day maybe that you really focus in on that social interaction. Again, we call it social distancing, but I really wish we would call it physical distancing so that we wouldn't lose the social aspect. So maybe it's in the morning before the workday gets started if you're working from home and have that opportunity. Maybe it's in the evening before dinner with your family and you have some time set aside that daily you just reach out to someone, whether it's by phone, whether it's sending a simple text message that says, I was thinking about you today. Maybe it's setting up a family Zoom call because typically you would have a family interaction. So maybe you set a time and a date where you're going to have an all together family Zoom call or a FaceTime or use Duo. There are a lot of opportunities for us to interact socially while maintaining that physical distance. And I think it's also important that we encourage our children to do so. They are having a sense of loss and longing from missing their end of year parties and graduations. And so it's important that we encourage them, if they have their friends' phone numbers, to outreach them and get in a group text or have a group Zoom meeting with their friends. Maybe they're playing video games together. That social interaction is critical to reminding us that we're not alone
Mhm.
and there is someone there while maintaining the physical distance.
Oh, for sure. And it's just fun. Sometimes I find myself talking to people I haven't talked to in years, and I'm like, it's good to talk to you and not be planning like a family problem or a family funeral. We're just calling to say, hey, how are you? How are you doing? And it's definitely a good thing. So thank you for that advice, Margaret. And Rebecca, what would you like to add to that? What do you recommend for staying connected?
Well, I would say that it's very important to maintain your family's traditions. Even though you cannot get together every week or every single time that you would like to, as Margaret mentioned, those Zoom meetings can, or whichever platform you use, can be really great. So I've had people who tell me, we're still celebrating my dad's birthday. We're all calling in. We're still going to, get together. Likewise with Mother's Day, Father's Day. Those days are very important to us, and we don't want to lose them just because we can't get together physically, but we still can get together through some social media platform. So let's use it.
For sure. Okay, well, ladies, we talked about self-care a moment ago as an important part of maintaining your mental health. So what are some activities we can do at home to take care of ourselves and also our families? And we'll start with you, Rebecca.
So one thing that I would recommend, again, aside from the exercise and activity, is absolutely finding fun things to do at home. Um, Creating opportunities for you and your family to do things together, maybe start a project together. Um, Again, pull out those old board games that maybe you haven't played in some time.
Yeah.
Some people are finding some new shows or new programming on TV that is geared towards family, and they'll sit around and they'll talk about what they saw. And then again, trying to maintain connections with people who maybe they can't see as often as they would like, but still have access to.
Yeah, there are a lot of good shows and good games out there that people need to explore. So hopefully they will and help de-stress a bit. Margaret, what about you?
Absolutely, I agree with the doctor. The other thing that I can say personally, my family has done is really look at photos. And so we've done this in a variety of ways. One was in what we call photo walks.
Uh-huh.
And so we go for a walk in our neighborhood or pick a hiking or biking trail and go for a walk and take meaningful photos, not necessarily of ourselves, it could be of the scenery. And then at the end of the week, we share those with our other family members that aren't close to us to kind of share a photo journey of our week. The other thing is for a birthday party, we have a family member that's not as technologically savvy. And so we had the rest of the family and friends send in their photos, and we created a photo book for this individual, mailed it to them, and it just helped them to feel connected because not everyone is as savvy with Zoom and digital
Sure.
media. So what we did for that family member was just send a photo book, and that helped to create that connection as well, and actually created a new tradition for our family this year.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Photos are always great. And plus, when all this is over one day, they'll be able to look back at those photos. They'll still be there to enjoy. So that's definitely a great idea. Well, ladies, even in the best of circumstances, maintaining your mental health can really be overwhelming. So, Rebecca, what should people do if they feel the need to talk to a professional?
Well, there's a lot of avenues to access their care. There are various community agencies that they can contact directly. They're always welcome to speak to their primary care doctor or their pediatricians for their children to see if either they can assist them with that care or give them resources. I know that our schools, even though they're not currently in session, are gearing up in the future to try and provide more support to their students and their families to try and help them as best as they can with straddling working from home and working from school. And then, of course, what I always do for those who maybe aren't necessarily a good fit for my services is I have them call their insurance provider and ask them for a list of resources and providers in network who can provide whatever care they need close to their home or specifically can meet their needs.
That's good to know. Great information. Now, there are resources, as you said, in place that viewers can turn to for advice and strategies for coping with COVID. Margaret, what do you want viewers to know about where they can turn to for help?
Absolutely. So at Cigna, we really do look at that mind-body connection. And we understand that 84% of the world's population is stressed on a good day, let alone during COVID-19. And some stress is normal. Actually, some stress is healthy. There is such a thing as good stress. But too much bad stress can affect our body and mind and can lead to chronic illness. So the sooner we learn to manage our stress, the better. One of the resources that I want to make sure your viewers are aware of is that we do have a COVID resource center that part of it addresses resources for healthcare workers, resources for veteran help, resources around preventing domestic violence, like I mentioned earlier, and that's Cigna.com/COVID. And then I also mentioned earlier, Cigna.com/My Stress Plan. But if it gets to a point where you feel like you need a professional, again, as reiterating what was stated earlier, contacting your primary care physician. We have a 24-hour nurse line at Cigna that is available to our members, but also there are resources that are available to everyone. So the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a 24/7 lifeline that individuals have access to. That phone number is 800-273-8255. And then for those that are tech savvy, there's also a crisis text line, and you can simply text the word home to 741-741. And so all of these resources are available. I think the most important thing is to recognize that, you're not alone in feeling stressed or anxious, and there are resources available with professionals to help. And that connection is important. Reaching out is important.
It definitely is important, and having the access is important too. Rebecca, you touched on this a bit earlier. You mentioned the connection that Parkland has in Irving with mental health resources. What do you offer here in Irving?
So in our Irving Clinic, which is located on 1800 North Britton Road, we do have a psychiatrist on staff as well as a mental health counselor, which is a master's level counselor. And so if you are a current Parkland patient, you would just need to speak with your primary care doctor about a potential referral to our services. And once we receive that referral, we will go ahead and ensure that you meet criteria for our services and then follow you up for care, schedule you for follow-up care. For those of you who may need a higher level of care or possibly we're not in network for, we will also provide information about which resources are available to you. We also have a mental health counselor in the Irving Women's Health Clinic Center for those women who receive services through that particular program. So we're really trying to build as much support as we can in the community because we know there's some limitations there. A lot of times Irving residents do have to drive into Dallas for services. So for those patients who live near our clinic, we're more than happy to help or provide those connections necessary to get what they need. Now, if you mind, I'd also like to add that for those who might be looking for external resources aside from Parkland, the North Texas Behavioral Health Authority provides behavioral health services to the surrounding counties here in Dallas, including Dallas, and they have a 24-hour mobile crisis hotline, and that number is 1-866-260-8000. So
Wonderful.
That's available 24 hours a day for anyone who may be in crisis. There's also an after-hours walk-in crisis clinic in South Dallas named Southern Area Behavioral Health Care. And they're open Monday through Friday from 2 to 10 p.m. and Sundays from 2 to 7 p.m. So that's a really great resource for those people who work during the day and can't typically come during the work hours of the various clinics that have these services. So if you go to 4333 Gannon Lane in Dallas, Texas, or call 972-283-9090, they can give you some more information about their available services.
Wonderful. I'm glad you provided that information for those who need it for sure. I do want to ask you this before we end the show. Are y'all seeing that people are actually starting to come into the centers, or is everything done virtually? How is it being handled right now?
So there's a balance. Our behavioral health providers are currently offering all of our services virtually. And that's because we don't want to put anyone in danger by coming to the clinic, because we are located within the primary care centers. So those patients who are coming to the clinic to see their doctors have a reason to be here.
I see.
So again, even that number is pretty limited. For those patients who can be managed virtually, our doctors are trying to manage them virtually. And as behavioral health providers, we don't have to touch our patients. We don't need to weigh them. We don't need to take any blood from them. So we would rather keep them safe and at home during this time.
Safe is definitely good. Thank you. I was wondering about that. And as we do come to a close, many of our viewers are aware that Mental Health Awareness Month is May, but you may not know that this year's theme was kindness. How important is simple kindness when it comes to mental health? Margaret, let's start with you.
Absolutely. Kindness is critical. And I think that kindness begins from a place of empathy. And empathy, you don't have to understand exactly what someone is dealing with, the specific thing that they're dealing with, but starting with kindness allows you to at least lead with that kindness so that there is understanding and healing. And I think that's critical. It's so important during this time. It doesn't cost you anything to be kind.
Yeah, kindness is definitely great. It goes a long way. Rebecca, would you like to add any closing comments at this time or offer a tip?
I would like to follow up on the idea of kindness. With the amount of stigma that still surrounds behavioral health, we need to be able to show those who are most in need, those who are most in crisis, that we are here, we're available, our arms are open, and we only want the best for them. And many times they're confronted by people who are not kind, people who judge them.
Yeah.
And I hope that they understand that behavioral health providers, people who work in the service of others, want only the best for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to some of the resources that I shared were national resources, but I want to make sure that your viewers are aware as well that if they are members of Cigna, we're available 24/7, and they can simply call the number on the back of their card or 1-800-CIGNA-24 for their care needs.
Thank you, Margaret. And I would like to remind everyone to take every cry for help seriously. It can change a life or save a life for sure. Thank you both for your excellent advice and for sharing additional resources that our viewers can certainly use. We are truly all in this together, and a little bit of kindness goes a very, very long way. Thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to tune in on Thursday, August 6th for the next edition of Open Line. We'll see you then.